Empires grow like trees. They begin as seeds, rise into towering giants, spread roots and branches, and for a time they look eternal. But every tree carries the same fate: decay from within, threats from without, or a final blow that brings it down. Rome was no different. It rotted internally through corruption, assassinations, and civil wars. It was weakened by plagues, stretched by bad leadership, and battered by relentless invasions. Today we're cutting through the myths and showing the real forces that brought the Roman world to its knees. Many people imagine Rome collapsing in a single dramatic moment. Odoacer marching into the city, removing Romulus Augustulus from the throne, and declaring a new kingdom. Reality is far more complicated. For ordinary Western Romans, the empire had been collapsing in slow motion for decades. Some historians argue the West was effectively finished after Alaric's sack in 410. Others point to Gaiseric and the Vandals in 455, whose raid exposed just how hollow imperial authority had become. Many blame the Huns, who devastated cities across Italy and Gaul, though famously they never took Rome. Their defeat in 451 saved Western Europe, but it also elevated the Franks, setting the foundations for a new power that would replace Roman authority. Different narratives exist because different peoples experience the collapse differently. But the truth is simple: Rome didn't fall in one moment. It unraveled through a long chain of political failures, military disasters, and internal decay. That's the real story, and that's what we're about to break down. Rome's political collapse began long before foreign armies crossed its frontiers. The empire destroyed itself from within. First, the leadership crisis. The Western Empire burned through emperors at a suicidal pace. Few ruled for long. Many were assassinated, and almost none had the authority to enforce long-term policy. Every general with a loyal army became a potential usurper, and stability was impossible. Second, civil wars. Instead of defending the frontiers, Rome's armies fought each other. Resources that should have supported the Rhine or Danube were wasted as generals competed for the purple. Every civil war left the state weaker than before. Third, administrative breakdown. As central authority collapsed, provinces operated more independently. Local elites resisted taxation, bureaucratic corruption spread, and the government could no longer maintain infrastructure or pay troops consistently. The West suffered a devastating leadership vacuum after the reign of Valentinian III. Child emperors, regencies, court factions, and puppet rulers dominated the political scene. Even competent generals, men like Stilicho and Aetius, were removed by court intrigue. Stilicho's execution in 408 opened the path for the Goths to sack Rome. A generation later, Aetius, the man who halted Attila, was also assassinated. By the mid-5th century, the Western imperial office had become a revolving door of weak rulers and unstable factions. Political authority didn't fall in a single moment. It degraded until it barely existed at all. Rome's military collapse began long before the final century of the Western Empire. A key turning point came in 212 or AD, when the Constitutio Antoniniana granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free men in the empire. While this expanded the tax base, it removed one of the strongest motivations for joining the army: the chance to earn citizenship. Over time, recruitment weakened. Combined with recurring plagues, the legions no longer resembled the disciplined forces of earlier eras. The crisis became undeniable in the disasters that followed. Rome had previously survived catastrophes like Cannae and the Teutoburg Forest, but the empire of the 4th century was no longer able to recover from a major defeat. The turning point was the Battle of Hadrianople in 378. An entire Roman field army was destroyed by Gothic and Alan forces. 2/3 of the army, including Emperor Valens, died. The surviving Goths were settled inside imperial borders, forming the same group that would later sack Rome in 410. Stilicho, one of the last competent Western commanders, managed to repel Gothic invasions twice, but he could not achieve a decisive victory. His assassination in 408 removed the final barrier between Italy and Alaric's forces. In 406, the Rhine frontier collapsed completely when Vandals, Alans, and Suebi crossed the frozen river. For the first time, Rome had no army present to stop them. Rome's final major military success came in 451 at the Catalanian plains, when Aetius and his allies halted Attila. Yet even this victory exposed a deeper truth. Rome could no longer raise an army of its own. Its survival depended on federate groups and allied warbands. As the 5th century progressed, discipline collapsed, loyalty fragmented, and the Western Empire ceased to possess a unified military force. By 476, there was no Roman army left to defend the emperor or the state. Rome's economy, once the backbone of the empire, also deteriorated over centuries. In the early imperial period, the aureus and denarius maintained extremely high purity, often above 98%. This stability allowed trade to flourish and troops to be paid regularly. But plagues, war, and rising military costs in the late 2nd century strained the treasury, and silver purity began to decline. The 3rd century brought full-scale monetary collapse. Civil wars and invasions forced repeated debasement of the currency, driving inflation. Diocletian attempted reforms, including his edict on maximum prices, but the crisis was too deep to reverse. Constantine introduced the gold solidus, one of the most stable coins in history. It restored financial order in the East and remained influential for centuries. But while the East recovered, the West continued to face shrinking revenues, declining agricultural output, tax evasion by large landowners, and depopulation. By the 5th century, the Western government could no longer maintain infrastructure, fund its armies, or enforce taxation effectively. An empire that cannot pay soldiers, maintain roads, or support administration cannot function. Economic collapse didn't merely weaken the West, it crippled its ability to survive. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was Roman in name more than in reality. The world that once produced citizens loyal to the state had changed completely. If you asked an inhabitant of Italy or Gaul whether he would fight for Rome, he might have answered, which one? Many had witnessed one, or even two sacks of the capital in their lifetimes. Imperial authority no longer protected them from invasions, oppressive taxation, or famine. Frequent changes of emperor eroded public confidence. A state that replaces its rulers every few years cannot inspire loyalty. It cannot command sacrifice. The East, by contrast, preserved a functioning bureaucracy, a strong capital in Constantinople, thick walls, and a stable army. The population of the East still believed in the state. The West no longer did. Barbarian migrations reshaped the social landscape of the former Western provinces. Gaul shifted toward Frankish rule. Britannia fell to the Angles and Saxons. Hispania and North Africa were lost to other peoples. Italy itself survived Attila more through luck and negotiation than through Roman strength. By the mid-5th century, the Western Empire no longer provided security, identity, or prosperity. Its collapse wasn't sudden, but the realization of it was. For many, the empire had ceased to exist long before the last emperor was deposed. Rome did not fall in a day, nor did it fall from one cause. Its collapse was the result of political instability, military exhaustion, economic breakdown, and a deep erosion of social confidence. When the Western Empire finally ended in 476, it was only the final stage of a decline that had unfolded for centuries. The shock was real, but the process was slow, and Western Europe took nearly a millennium to recover the stability and complexity Rome once provided. If there is one lesson in this history, it is that internal decay often matters more than external threats. No empire can survive repeated assassinations, broken finances, and a population that no longer believes in the state. Understanding the real causes of Rome's fall is essential, not for nostalgia, but to grasp the forces that shape the rise and decline of civilizations. These are the true factors behind the collapse of the Western Roman Empire.